UFO whisks away a young boy to a far-off planet. After years pass, the child returns to Earth, astounded to find a world drastically transformed. The story kicks off on July 4th, 1978, in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, at the Frisbee Dog Championship. 12-year-old David Freeman engages in a squabble with his 8-year-old brother Jeff, who teases David's dog Bruiser for not clinching the competition. Despite attempts by their parents, Helen and Bill, to mediate, the boys persist in trading insults. Later that evening, the Freeman family heads home, leaving Jeff to play with his friends. As dusk descends, Helen asks David to fetch his brother, assuring him it won't take long and promising a family dinner and fireworks spectacle. Reluctant but agreeing, David, accompanied by Bruiser, sets off to locate Jeff through the woods. As they delve deeper, Bruiser's excitement turns into peculiar behavior, and a mysterious glow catches David's attention through the trees. Continuing onward, Jeff unexpectedly startles David by leaping down from a tree. Despite irritation, David proceeds, following an anxious Bruiser who barks at the edge of a ravine. Peering into the darkness, David suddenly loses consciousness to a musical backdrop, but soon awakens, scrambling out of the ravine and making his way home. However, upon reaching his doorstep, David encounters a wholly unfamiliar woman. Baffled, he asserts his residence, but the woman remains unconvinced. David rushes into the house, urgently calling for his parents, only to be confronted by yet another stranger who assumes the child is lost. Concerned, the couple decides to involve the police, leading to David being taken to the station. After some time, officers stumble upon an old case involving a missing 12-year-old boy who strikingly resembles David. During interrogation, the boy vehemently insists that it's still July 1978, deeply unsettling the police. The officers, accompanied by David, visit the new Freeman family home in an attempt to clarify the details of the child's disappearance. Unexpectedly, David spots his parents at the door and rushes toward them, only to discover they've undergone significant changes. Helen and Bill, overjoyed, embrace their son, leading David to lose consciousness in their arms. Meanwhile, in the town, the police make a startling discovery. A UFO has crashed into a power line support. Seeking expertise, they call upon Dr. Faraday from NASA, whose astonishment at what he observes is palpable. David eventually wakes up in the hospital, where his father queries about his whereabouts during the extended absence. Confidently, the boy asserts that after encountering Jeff, he promptly returned home. Suddenly, the elder Jeff enters the room, leaving David utterly astonished. With the parents excusing themselves, Jeff takes the opportunity to apologize for frightening David in the woods, admitting his self-blame for the disappearance. He reveals that their parents clung to hope, believing in a miracle. Jeff discloses that it's now 1986, signifying 8 years have passed since that eerie night in the woods. Later, as the parents return, they convey to David that he must remain in the hospital for a few more days, allowing doctors to conduct thorough examinations. One night, David abruptly awakens, informing his brother of a voice beckoning to him inside his head. Despite Jeff's attempts to reassure him that it's merely a dream, David remains unsettled. The following day, an alien spacecraft is directed to NASA's base. Specialists encounter a challenge as the flying spaceship's shell appears seamless, posing difficulty in gaining access. Simultaneously, scientists scrutinize David's brain activity, noticing an extraordinary occurrence. His brain transmits an extensive amount of information to the computer, translating it into binary code and revealing the blueprints of the alien craft. The perplexing research findings swiftly make their way to NASA, prompting Dr. Faraday to approach the Freemans urgently, seeking permission to conduct further examinations on David. Bill adamantly refuses, unwilling to subject his son to experimental procedures. However, Faraday persists, emphasizing the quest for truth. He turns to David, questioning if he desires answers about his disappearance, the memory lapse, and his lack of aging. Faraday proposes just 48 hours at NASA's research center. After a brief moment of contemplation, David reluctantly agrees. He is transported to the base and settled into a room filled with toys. Soon, an intern named Carolyn Madams enters, showcasing a robot designed to deliver food and various items. David expresses surprise at the absence of his favorite TV program, unaware that it has been off the air for quite some time. Additionally, he encounters music videos for the first time, which astonishes Carolyn, as she remains clueless about his experiences in outer space. Curious about his absence, Carolyn inquires, but David, feeling bewildered and disoriented, admits to having no recollection of anything, growing wary of her probing questions. Carolyn swiftly changes the topic, assuring David of a delicious breakfast treat before departing. The following day, Dr. Faraday permits David to make a call home to reassure his family of his well-being. Soon after, Faraday and his team commence a fresh round of examinations on David, attaching specialized sensors to his head. The doctor inquires about the events following his fall into the ravine. Suddenly, all the computers malfunction as they are bombarded by an overwhelming surge of information. Despite this, David remains unable to recall anything. Faraday's colleague prompts David to state his name, and astonishingly, the computer responds faster than David can speak. Perplexed by the unfolding events, researchers persist in questioning David about his whereabouts over the last 8 years. Irritated, David reiterates his lack of memory, yet his brain contradicts his words. Information flashes on the screen, revealing that the boy was on a distant planet called Fawn, situated 560 light-years away from Earth. Scientists discover that although David experienced less than 5 hours during the journey, 8 years had elapsed on Earth. Shocked by this revelation, Faraday implores David to reveal Fawn's location, and the boy's brain promptly provides a star map. Overwhelmed, Faraday exclaims, "My God, these are uncharted sisters." In terror, the boy witnesses the unfolding events, frantically tearing off the sensors and fleeing. Faraday comprehends that David will need to remain with them much longer than initially planned. In the evening, Carolyn visits David with a food-carrying robot. David confides in her, expressing his discomfort with the situation, finding solace in the belief that he'll return home the following day. However, Carolyn inadvertently discloses that they intend to detain him at the center for at least 5 more days. Panic seizes David momentarily, realizing the extended captivity. Unnoticed by the vigilant guards, David implores Carolyn to assist him in escaping. That night, once again awakened by the mysterious calling voice in his head, he encounters a robot dispatched by Carolyn. It transports him to a hangar housing the enigmatic flying spaceship. As he approaches, an entrance materializes in the seamless shell, revealing stairs leading inside. Cautiously, the astonished boy steps in, where the ship's computer initiates communication with him. David soon recognizes this voice as the same one that has been beckoning him. The mysterious voice bestows upon him the title of the Navigator, and discloses that David's brain holds crucial star maps, essential for his return to the distant planet. Without these star maps, the voice reveals, David cannot navigate his way back. Amidst the chaos, security notices the entrance appearing in the impenetrable ship, triggering alarms. Dozens of armed NASA personnel, including Faraday, storm into the hangar, perceiving the ship as a hostile alien entity. When prompted if it wishes to depart, the ship confirms, prompting it to break free from restraints, open its gates, and prepare to journey back to Fawn. However, the boy intervenes, requesting to be taken home instead. The computer, unable to determine the route, awaits David's instructions. Startled, David suggests flying approximately 20 miles away from the base, but a misinterpretation causes the ship to sharply ascend, leaving onlookers astonished. Faraday proposes returning to the communication room to track the ship's movements. David commands the computer to return to Earth and move 20 miles forward, not upward. They come to a halt, allowing David to inquire about his purpose on Earth. The ship's computer discloses that it was collecting biological specimens for analysis on Fawn and accidentally selected David. Additionally, it reveals that the inhabitants of Fawn hypothesized that humans only use 10% of their brains. To test this, the ship embedded all its star maps into David's brain, but an encounter with a high-voltage power line wiped out the data. Now, without David's assistance, the ship cannot fulfill its mission or return home. Enraged by being taken away from home for 8 years, David demands to be returned, if not to the past, at least to his home. Suddenly, NASA helicopters swarm above them, but the computer assures the boy that once it regains access to its maps, it will transport him anywhere he desires. They embark on their journey, vanishing from the scientist's view without a trace. Finally, David asks the robot what to call it, and it introduces itself as the Triaction drone ship. "Okay, I'll call you Max," the boy decides, finding it easier. Max readily accepts the new name. Suggesting they hide from NASA employees, David is startled when Max swiftly plunges into the sea. Once in safety, Max shifts focus to extracting information from David's brain. Opening one of the ship's compartments, David is astounded to find numerous creatures from different planets. Amidst the intimidating and aggressive beings, David discovers the harmless Puckmarin from the now-destroyed planet Binpukaminer, which collided with a comet. Expressing his desire to return home, David implores Max. Meanwhile, at NASA, radar detection ceases, unable to track the ship's whereabouts. The situation takes a drastic turn as David's father contacts Faraday to check on his son's well-being. However, the doctor refrains from admitting that the boy is missing. Eventually, Max successfully retrieves essential data from David's brain, alongside numerous irrelevant details. Surprisingly, Max starts exhibiting human-like behavior. This sparks a disagreement between David and Max regarding their intelligence. Offended by the argument, Max raises the ship to a height, challenging David to figure out how to control it. In a state of nervousness, David frantically searches for levers as the ship plunges into free fall. Faraday, monitoring the situation, notices the loss of control, realizing the impending crash. Fortunately, David presses the right button just in time, causing the ship to ascend. As David takes over piloting, he discovers it's not as challenging as he initially thought. Meanwhile, Carolyn visits the Freeman family, revealing that David has flown away on an alien ship. However, her disclosure doesn't go unnoticed, and she's swiftly apprehended by NASA employees, pressured to reveal the truth about David's escape. Unexpectedly finding themselves in Tokyo, David and Max attract enthusiastic crowds, capturing their journey on film. Soon after, they fly over San Francisco. However, as time passes, they realize they're lost somewhere in Texas. Descending, they approach some locals for directions to David's hometown of Fort Lauderdale, but the frightened individuals drive away in fear. At this point, Max becomes curious about the sounds he heard from the people who were inside the car. The individuals in the car are intrigued by the music, and Max expresses a desire to hear something similar. David suggests tuning into a similar radio frequency. Meanwhile, on every news channel, discussions revolve around the astounding UFO, and researchers observe its return to Florida. David urges Max to halt at the nearest gas station to make a call home. Local residents stare in disbelief at the flying spaceship. Jeff answers the phone and alerts David about NASA employees surrounding their home. Despite David being close, Jeff struggles to provide clear directions to their new residents. To aid in locating them, David requests a visible signal from Jeff. Promising to devise a plan, Jeff ends the call. Continuing their journey, they soon approach Fort Lauderdale. Jeff climbs onto the house roof and ignites fireworks, catching the attention of David and Max, signaling that they've reached home. With a tinge of sadness, David bids farewell to Max, expressing his gratitude for their time together. He excitedly plans to share his adventures with friends, only to realize they have all grown up while he hasn't. Max expresses willingness to return David 8 years ago, but deems it too risky. As the ship approaches the Freeman family's home, David notices numerous NASA vehicles, realizing he won't be left alone by them. Panic sets in as he witnesses the intense presence of NASA, casting a shadow of fear and uncertainty. Max opens the exit, and David steps out, only to be met by frantic researchers, security, and police. Realizing he won't be able to lead a normal life, David bids a heartfelt farewell to his parents, expressing love before returning to the spaceship. He implores Max to attempt sending him back to the past, despite the risks involved. Max cautions about potential vaporization or turning to dust, but David feels it's his only option to avoid a lifetime of ridicule from NASA. After bidding another farewell and expressing gratitude, David and Max embark on the perilous time travel. Moments later, David awakens in the same ravine where he fell in 1978. Rushing home, he finally reunites with his family, who had been anxiously awaiting his return. The Freemans head to dinner, and in a moment of vulnerability, David confesses his love to his family, including the dog and his once annoying brother. While Helen and Bill discuss dinner plans, a Puckmarin peeks out of David's backpack, catching Jeff's attention. David urges Jeff to keep it a secret. Meanwhile, Independence Day celebrations continue, and amidst the fireworks, David spots Max in the sky, signaling to him before flying back to PH. David, now back with his family, carries the bittersweet memory of his extraordinary journey, cherishing the love and connections that mean the most to him.